Hey everyone. So to continue where we left off, um, or for those of you who are just joining and want to see this one, I'm planning on creating a method for the camera functionality to track a focal point and whether the player has entered that focal point by providing a threshold distance value that will check if the player is within a certain distance of that focal point and change the way the camera is going to function. So first things first, we can do it two different ways. One, we could have a Boolean return value from this. So um, if it does find a focal point within range that it wants to snap to, you'll be able to choose which kind of other function to use between the two targets. Right now we just have a lerp average between targets or a lock average between targets, or you could even just have it lerp to the target. But let's continue. This is going to be, I'd want to say, we can call it search focal points. Might change that, I don't know, but let's continue. So camera, we'll want to provide it an array of vectors that will be considered focal points, and we'll just import that real quick. Focal points. And then we also want to have the position that we're checking against the focal points to determine if we're close enough to change how the camera behaves. So that's going to be current target. So easily enough, all we have to do is for each of those focal points, so that's going to be vector 2 point focal points, and that's just a for each for loop, or a for each loop. And in that for each loop, we can do target.dst, which stands for distance, and it's a provided function with the LibGDX vectors. It'll essentially just do the distance function for you and calculate automatically between those two targets or vectors. And then you'll want to do point is greater than threshold. Oh, actually, you know what? We need to add that. Float threshold. That's going to be what we're using as the distance to check. So, and that should be less than. So if the target and its distance from this point is less than the threshold, we want the camera to behave by, let's say, we want to lerp to target camera, and that should be point, actually. Yeah, so point, and that's easy enough to do there, and then that's going to return true because it did find a focal point. Otherwise, it's going to return false, and if it returns false, then it's just going to continue what it was doing before. So we can go back into here and have our camera styles dot go down to search focal points camera, and I do have a array already set up in here that every time a room is created, it is added to this array of focal points. So essentially the focal points I want to focus on are the center of the room, and if the player is close enough to the center of the room, it'll change the way the camera will behave. So otherwise, I just want it to follow the player's position. So player get position dot scale ppm, as usual, scale those by your pixels per meter, and then let's say 180 pixels difference. So camera type equals focal search player center of room break. And I think I need to add one more to this. Yep, 3. We can get rid of that real quick. So as you observed there, how when I made this, I didn't even create any of this extra boilerplate code like I was using before by setting the position. I just called another camera function that we already had created. And because these are static, I should actually call it like that. And so let's go back here real quick. So all we have is it's just searching for focal points, and I didn't create what happened if it returned false. So found equals whatever that returns. If not found, then camera styles dot, we'll just lerp to target, and we'll just set that to lerp to the player position. Player.get position.scale ppm. Okay, so we're going to see some pretty interesting behavior when we throw this together, and you'll start to see these more advanced type of approaches. So let's switch over to our focal search, and now you see like I'm close enough to the center of the room that it's not tracking the player, it's tracking the center of the room. But if I go far enough, did you see that? It just kind of snapped right to the player after that. So we'll go into another room, and if I get close enough to the center, it'll be like, oh, I found the center of the room. The player's close enough. Let's snap to that. Do you know, you might want to optimize it if you have too many focal points. However, in most levels, I imagine a focal point will either be enemies, and that'll be easy enough to just go through the list of enemies and figure out whether they're targeting or within a certain distance. And so you could keep it limited, although I guess there shouldn't really be too much efficiency problems there. But you get a lot of nice functionality out of that just by determining that focal point distance search. So that is exactly what we expected, and I hope you guys really enjoy this kind of method of how the camera would snap or change. So that's also a nice thing to use for enemies and whatnot. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or you have certain camera functions you'd like me to figure out how to implement for you guys in LibGDX, let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to teach myself and then teach you. So thanks again.